Good afternoon. It's another stunning day in Byron Bay in the northern rivers of Australia. Today I've got the 7 directions or reasons why I love living in this area. I've got 3 new medical studies, one on iodine, one on the microbiome / brain, and one on sun and bone strength, which show the inherent wisdom or intelligence of our bodies which can't be micromanaged. I've got 3 Greek mythological figures to discuss, and I've got 1 decentralized, immutable cyberspace monetary system to discuss. So if you're interested in any of that, hang in there. We'll get through the musical break and we'll get started. Alright, so let's have a look at the 7 reasons why, the 7 directions I love living in this area near Byron. Okay, 1 reason, in that direction, south of Byron, there's a nature reserve. In this direction, north of Byron, is a nature reserve. In this area, out towards Julian Rocks, is a marine park full of dolphins and migrating whales and grey nurse sharks and leopard sharks. In this direction, most days, got beautiful sunlight. In this direction, I've got the obsidian rock that underlies the earth in Byron. And the last reason, of course, is that because it's a kind of artistic, cultural health centre of the country, reminds me a lot of my hometown of Nelson in New Zealand. So anybody listening from Nelson, can't wait to get back when I come back with my daughter and hike the Abel Tasman National Park again. So let's have a look at these 3 studies and the inherent intelligence of our bodies. So the first one, let's talk about the gut and the brain first. So this was a study in Nature which just came out last week, which shows that, let's imagine you're living in a small community in Alaska and you're surrounded by grizzly bears. Well, you can live in harmony with those grizzly bears, but what you do is, because they can go a bit crazy sometimes, you make sure that you put some guards around your food stores and your village, because most of the time you can live in harmony with those bears, but just in case they come in one day and decide to destroy your food reserves, you make sure you put some sentry guards around that. And here's what the gut does. So this study showed that the gut sends B cells called plasma cells from the gut to the brain to protect it against any gut fungus or organisms which might leak into the bloodstream and go to the brain. We've always thought that the brain was a sterile organ, but now we know that it isn't, and it's constantly under attack from microbes that can get into the bloodstream. So it has this defense system at the meningeal level and around the sinus areas which keep these microbes out. Most of those microbes come from the gut. And here's the really cool thing. The gut produces plasma cells, or B cells, which produce antibodies, which it then sends to the brain and puts it around these areas of the brain to protect it from any fungus or bacteria from the gut that might get up near the brainstem, around the meninges of the brain. So the gut has this inherent wisdom that says, okay, look, we're here, we're good guys, we're full of good probiotic species, but occasionally we can get some fungus and send into the bloodstream, so we're going to send some white cells to the brain to act as sentry guards around the area where the blood interacts with the brain to protect it from these microbes which might get into the bloodstream. And what happens is that if the gut is sterilized, these plasma cells disappear from around the brain. If the gut gets particularly infected, the plasma cells of this blood-brain barrier increase. So it's the body inherently is able to increase or decrease the protection of the brain depending on how toxic the gut is. Second study was just a reminder about iodine. There was a study up this week showing people who are vegan in particular are deficient in iodine. They all know about their extra need for B12, but surprisingly they were very deficient in iodine, even more deficient than people who aren't vegan, and of course that's why you always see me down here collecting seaweed, because I think traditionally seaweed has been our source of iodine, and I like seaweed as a source of iodine because it comes all with the other nutrients. It's programmed by the ocean and the sun, and it's with all the other nutrients in seaweed. Because here's what we know that every part of the body has a different requirement for iodine. There was a study out recently which showed that different parts of the brain have different quantities of iodine in it. So the iodine requirement for your big toe is going to be different to the iodine requirement of your thyroid gland, which is going to be different to the iodine requirement of your brain, which has also got different iodine requirements. So your frontal lobe has got different iodine requirements than the cerebellum of your brain. We can't micromanage that. We can't send different amounts of iodine to different parts of the brain. We have to rely on the brain. Get used to different. We have to get used to different. We have to rely on the brain, our bodies, knowing how to distribute that iodine appropriately. And it does that because it has this inherent intelligence which communicates with the environment around us, which is why I always talk about how we've discovered free mitochondria in the blood, which we don't even know what they do yet, but absolutely going to turn out how our bodies communicate through a sixth sense with the environment that we live in. And the third study was about sunlight, and just a reminder how important it is to get on the body and how important that sunlight is for bone strength. And here was a fascinating thing. They found in Sweden that bone strength changed from season to season. So in summer, bone strength went up with the extra sun exposure to the vitamin D. In winter, in the same year, the bone strength went down, which shows you that the sunlight exposure will absolutely, on a season to season basis, change the strength of your bone, i.e. the more sun that we can get, the stronger our bones. And that brings me on to the three Greek mythological figures: Herodotus, Helios, and Prometheus. Herodotus, Herodotus is not a mythological figure. Herodotus was a Greek historian, and he's relative to the story because he noticed in 500 BC, 480 BC I think it was, that sunlight was important for bone strength. So we've known about this for over 2,000 years now. And how he knew that was when he was going around the battlefields where Egyptians had been fighting the Persians. He found that the Egyptian people who had died, that they were burying, had very thick skulls and very strong bones, because the Egyptians shaved their heads because they knew, I don't know how they knew, I also don't know how they built the pyramids, and I don't know how they got the hallways through the pyramids as straight as you would if you had a laser that we can't still do today. But that's a mystery for another time. So the Egyptians would shave their head because they knew sunlight on their head would give them stronger bone strength, whereas the Persians had very thin skulls because they wore skull caps all the time, which protected them from the sun. So the Egyptians had very thick skulls because they shaved their head to protect them from the sun, whereas the Persians had very, very thin bones of the head. So for over 2,000 years now, we've known the ability of the sun to increase bone strength. The other two Greek mythological figures, of course, Prometheus. Why do I like Prometheus? Well, Prometheus stole fire from Zeus, the fire from the sun. It's just come out. The fire from the sun to give to us mortals, to give us the ability to take responsibility for ourselves, give us the power of gods. It's what sunlight is. Sunlight is this power that gives us ability to control our own health. Helios was the Greek god of sunlight, and Prometheus gave us fire. What's fire? Fire is just releasing the energy of the sun from plant material. That's how important sunlight is for us. Gives us strong bones, gives us a strong immune system. protects us from cancer. So that's why I'm always out here getting sunlight on as much of my body as I can. And finally, just a reminder, as nation states start to come under pressure, just a reminder to have a look into the one decentralized, immutable cyber currency of Bitcoin, which, like Prometheus, like fire, has given us the power to look after our own financial responsibility. So I'm about to go for a swim. I've just been to the markets in Mullumbimby to get my produce for the week from the local farmers and artisans, supporting the local community. Have a great weekend, everybody. Get out, get some sun, look after your skin when you're out there, don't get burnt. Peace and love. See you next week from Byron. Bye.